guys, and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, then welcome to the chaos. I do all things music related on here, from audio engineering style content to production and songwriting challenges to just talking about music and musician life. Today's video is going to be a bit of a recording tips kind of video, mainly just through me sharing some of the things that I do when I'm recording in this space solo that make my life a little bit easier in terms of getting recordings down. Working in this space is great, but in some ways, when you're working completely solo, a massive studio space like this is actually not that great to work in. There are always challenges when you're self-recording, when you're not working with a separate engineer who's just focusing on the engineer side of things so that you can just focus on the musician side of things. You know, those challenges basically that being things like you're the one who has to do all of the triggering the recording and setting things up. So there's a lot more breaking in between takes of stuff. Like, it takes me a lot longer to move through the project if I'm doing different takes of different sections in a song, for example. Then I've got to actually set up the session each time to move to the next section. And I generally find that it's slower to do that yourself because you have to move back and forth between being in the position ready to record to being in the position to do things on the computer. And obviously, if you do this sort of stuff a lot, then you probably set up your home studio setup to work very well for self-recording. My home studio setup is pretty decently set up now, organized and arranged in a way to make it easier for me to move back and forth between things when I'm recording myself. But then there are things relating to trying to set your levels right and making sure that you're actually getting the sound out of the equipment that you want. Even down to something as simple as getting the position of a microphone correct if you're playing an instrument. It's actually quite difficult to mic yourself up playing acoustic guitar because you have to have the guitar on to set the mics right, and then you'll be like, oh, I just want to move that and I just need to tilt that down a bit more, and you've got to lean forward with the guitar on you, and you wind up having to put the guitar down so you can adjust the mics, and you pick the guitar back up and you realize actually you've tilted it down too far and you've got to tilt it back up again. These are the basic things that are a challenge when you're recording yourself in any space, not even a space like this, just any space. Those are challenges. But there are definitely more challenges to recording yourself in a proper professional studio like this, where you've got a full-on control room, a full-on live room, a full-on vocal booth, and all of this equipment to work with. And so I thought I'd just show you a little bit of how I'm setting up today and how I actually do things, and how the kind of tips, I guess, for things I've learned along the way that make it easier for me to record myself. So it'd be nice if other people share their own workflow and choices and decisions and opinions they have on how they do things, you know, because you may well disagree with one big point I'm going to make in this video. Okay, so obviously the biggest difference between recording a space like this versus my own little home studio space is the fact that this is two separate rooms. Obviously, when I am in this room, I cannot see what's going on in that room. And when I'm in that room, I can't be in this room playing. All of the controls are generally in that room. There are some really easy ways to work around needing to hit the record button though. The biggest one being just looping the section that you're looking to record, hitting record, coming back in here, and then just playing the part as is. The downside to that, obviously, if you're literally just looping a section and then just coming in here and recording, is you could end up with a bunch of takes where right at the start you're getting settled in, and you're likely to end up with takes in the middle where you need to just stretch, tune up. So you could end up with a bunch of takes of just you tuning up, because you can't really, it wouldn't be worthwhile going back into that room every single time to stop it recording, come back in here, tune up, go back in there, set it off for another 3 loops, come back in, because you need to tune up, especially when it comes to things like recording guitar. You need to tune up between takes. When it comes to things like vocals, that's a bit easier because you don't have to tune up your voice between takes, and generally I find that I get better vocal takes if I just keep running one take into the next and don't take breaks in between. So looping it alone is not a perfect solution to this. My preferred way, because I use Logic, is to use the Logic Remote app. But basically what I can do is I can select the section I want to loop, so I can literally go through the entire song, because obviously if I were just looping one section to record in here, I would have to go back in there every single time I wanted to change which section I'm recording. And that would be especially frustrating if I was, you know, having a really good day and I was getting the parts done in 3 takes. With the Logic Remote app, it's really easy for me to just move that looped section to wherever I next need it. It's also great because the other challenge of recording in a space like this is monitoring myself. In this studio, and in most studios, there will be some sort of setup where the headphones will be going out through some sort of monitoring station, not just through a headphone amp. They will probably also have a station like this set up where there's more control over what is coming through your headphones than just how loud everything is. Because it's set up in here that you can monitor the signal actually going into the desk, so the thing you're actually recording separately from Logic, that can be sent to this monitor control on separate channels. So you could do something simple like be able to really easily turn down the already recorded parts you're listening to and turn up the signal of you in the vocal booth or in here. That's still relatively limited. That's quick and easy, and I think that's the best solution when you are working with an engineer in this room, for the engineer to be able to say that you can basically set those really basic levels for yourself in here. They don't have to worry about it, but there might be a part where I haven't comped that bit yet, and I'm moving on to recording something else, and the last take I did has some sort of messed up bit in it, and every time I'm reaching that part as I'm trying to record, I'm distracted by the incorrect thing on the other recording, and I just want to mute that because I don't need it. Maybe a lot of the time when I'm recording acoustic guitar, all I really need is the drums. Obviously, I can't do that with one of these, but I can do that with the Logic Remote app. This isn't a difficulty that you encounter if you're in here recording with an engineer, because the engineer has complete control over everything on the project still in there. And so if you tell them, hey, that bass guitar has got a mistake in it, it's really distracting me every time I hear it and I'm getting this part wrong, can you just mute that bass guitar? They can just go, yeah, and they just mute the bass guitar and you go in for another take. But obviously, if I didn't have the Logic Remote app, I would have to get up and go in there and do that. But because I can do that through the Logic Remote app, it's nice and simple, easy. And I'm saying I would have to get up and go in there to do that, but that's not entirely true. Well, I would, but James wouldn't if he were in a recording drums. James has it set up in here that he's got a monitor over there by his drums. He's also got a mouse and a keyboard in here that are both connected up to the computer in there. And so basically, he has a secondary control in here for when he's doing drums, because he regularly takes sessions in here where he is recording drums for people, so it's easier if he can just take care of all that himself. Because he has that monitor set up, he can. But if you use Logic, then I can definitely tell you that the Logic Remote app works very well for this. I've only occasionally had an issue with it not connecting to a session, and ironically, I have never had an issue in here with it not connecting to a session. I've only ever had an issue with it deciding it won't find the session on my computer at home for some reason. But one thing I cannot monitor on Logic Remote is I cannot monitor the outboard equipment. If there was someone in this room just playing guitar into these microphones, then I could just be in that room looking at the desk and seeing what's happening in there. But if I'm in this room playing guitar, then I can't be in that room watching the levels. So generally, monitoring myself on Logic Remote, I can figure out roughly how much I need to change by, so I can just pop in here, change that, go back in, do another quick strum, see if I'm happy with it, and then what I'll eventually have to do is do a take and see how that sounds. Which means basically, I have to keep going back and forth between these two rooms over and over again before I'm confident I've got the sound I want. Just to give you the full picture here, this is me earlier setting up to record this guitar in here. Okay, so I can already see that things are definitely way too loud. So this one's alright, but this one is up way too high. Okay, yeah, so I had accidentally left the gain up on the desk way too high on the other one. I hadn't spotted that I needed to turn the gain knob down on it. Okay, so the left one is still, the right one now even, sorry, is a little bit too high. And the DI is way too quiet. That's better, right. I think I'm going to back the mics up ever so slightly. Not by much, just a touch. Now, arguably, some of the things I've got coming out that levels-wise might not be perfect. I was probably a little bit lazy, and looking back at what the level was like going into the desk, what I probably should have done is turn the level up a little bit more on the mic pre's and bring the faders down on the desk a little, because I think I was getting a fine signal coming out of the mic pre's before actually, and there wouldn't have been any distortion there, and I just needed to turn the level down going out into Logic. And really, because you cannot monitor your own performance in any way, shape or form while you are recording, you always have to do a take that you can listen back to when you're not actually playing to hear how it sounds. Because obviously, if I'm playing guitar, especially if I'm singing, I can't really hear what's coming out the headphones much at all if I'm singing. I've convinced myself sometimes that I'm hearing what's coming through from the headphones, and I'll come in here and I'll realize that the guitar sounds way thinner on the recording than it sounded in there. And that's of course it did, because I've got the full guitar tone in here. I can't tell things like if I've got the mics close enough. I can't hear if anything's distorting or not unless it's really, 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 really distorting, you know, unless it's so obvious. So you always end up having to do a take and come back in and check the take and then maybe make some changes and go ahead. And quite often what I'll find is if I'm listening back to that take, I'm like, that sounds good enough to me. I won't bother tweaking any further than that. And that's a decently big challenge when I'm recording myself at home in my home studio as well, but it's a particularly big challenge in here because it does just take so much longer to go back, you know, going back and forth between the rooms just makes it so much more of a hassle to change levels and stuff in here. But one thing I have started doing, and here's one of my first tips, is I've started setting up my phone in here on video, just sticking one of the tripods on and just pointing it at the faders on the desk. And if I'm using any outboard equipment, I might go over and I might point it at the outboard equipment. Now, the only outboard equipment I've used today is the mic pre's. What I was more worried about was if I was going into the desk strong enough at all. But yeah, I set my phone up so that I could actually take a video of what was going on the desk, so that I could just check that back as I'm listening to it and go how it looked like it was coming through on the faders and how the signal sounded. Because obviously, when I just play back whatever I've recorded on there, it doesn't then show me what was going on the desk at the time. So one big piece of advice I would give people is leave a phone in a room taking a video of something you want to check, because when you come back in to check, you might not be in quite the right headspace and you might just rush things a little bit, be like, yeah, no, that's fine, that's not hitting the compressor too hard, I'm happy with that. And then you might see, oh, actually it is hitting the compressor too hard if you look back on your phone, and then you might make you stop and actually listen again and go, yeah, if I listen with my audio engineer head on, that is definitely hitting the compressor too hard. Because in my opinion, I think it's actually quite difficult for most people to wear the hats of audio engineer, musician, and artist at the same time. And I think sometimes ego gets in the way of people admitting this. If you want to get a really good recording, a really good mix, then you really need to be concentrating on those parts of the recording process. When I'm in here, I maybe want artist head on a little bit, but I mostly want musician head on. I definitely don't want to have to be wearing my audio engineer hat too much, you know? Like once everything is set up, I want to be able to just sit here and concentrate on getting the takes right. It takes concentration to get things in time, to make sure you're getting all the nuances of the performance that you want. If you really want to get a really good take in terms of the performance, you can't be sitting there thinking about whether the compression is coming out right, whether the levels are right. You want to be able to get all of that set up as quickly as possible so that you can just sit here and do take after take after take and not have to worry about the levels anymore. The more faffing you're doing with different pieces of equipment, the longer it's going to take you to do that. And the more likely you are to get a few takes in and then think, I really should just double check this again. Go in there and double check it and find that you've just done a bunch of really great takes, but you did miss one tiny little thing. It was hitting the compressor ever so slightly too hard. And now you can't undo that. Again, this is one of those challenges I'd say isn't unique to this space. It's just sort of exacerbated by this space, because then moving back and forth between the rooms in order to make changes to things is so much more of a hassle that I find I am more likely to get lax and lazy with things in here and go, that'll do, it's all right. Whereas if I were in here recording someone else, because it would be so much easier for me to make a tweak or a change, I just would do it. Or if I were in my home studio and it was a bit easier for me to just quickly knock the gain up a little bit on something, or you know, listen back to it and go, actually, I do want to push the microphone back a little bit more or forward a little bit more. It's so much quicker and easier for me to make those decisions in my home studio space, because moving back and forth between the two planes isn't as... I don't have to go through two doors to do it. And I usually don't even have to detangle myself from my guitar to do it. Quite often, I am literally sitting right by my desk with my guitar. Which is why, and this is probably going to be the most controversial opinion I share in this video, because every time I've said this to other friends who record themselves and are really big on outboard equipment. I'm not as big on outboard equipment as some other people. I haven't used it as much, and so I'm of the opinion that whether you use a plug-in or an outboard piece of equipment, it doesn't really matter. It just depends on what the sound you want is. Anyway, not the point. Point being, I hold the very controversial opinion among my friends that if you are recording yourself, you should use as little outboard gear as possible in the recording process. The more pieces of equipment that your signal is going through before it's getting recorded into Logic, that are making a permanent change to that signal that you cannot undo afterwards, right? The more settings you've got to get right to get the exact tone you want. Which is great and fine if you're doing a full take of a vocal in the booth while the engineer is in here tweaking the settings until they're happy with where the compressor is sitting in, how heavily it's compressing. It's not so fine when you are the one in the vocal booth. You have to do a take, come back in here, watch your phone to see how the set levels were looking on the compressor, listen to it back and decide whether or not it was compressing or not. And again, switching back and forth between those two headspaces. And then if it's not, I've got to make changes to the settings. I've then got to go back in there. I've got to do another take, come back in here and check it. Just don't put them on in the first place. Like, it's really easy. If I decide I want to run my vocal through one of the compressors in here, then I don't need to do that while I'm recording. I could do it while I'm recording, but I could also just send the signal back out of Logic, route it back out using the patch bay, into the piece of equipment I want to go to, get all the settings and stuff right, keep tweaking it. It will just play through as if someone's in the booth singing. It will be just like that. I can tweak and change until I'm happy with the settings. Then you just have to, I think the way it works, and I haven't actually done it yet, but I'm pretty sure the way it works in Logic is you would just re-record that track then onto another track. The only piece of equipment where you might see a really drastic difference and where it is a little bit more worthwhile maybe doing it when you're recording is to go through any mic pre's that you're planning on going through. Because in here, I have the option to either go into the mic pre's on the desk, or they've got two Neve mic pre's, which I actually use today. That's the only thing that I personally have been bothered about doing in the recording process, because that's the only thing where I can see there possibly being a big difference between recording in through that initially and sending the signal back out after, because you probably aren't going to get exactly the same tone if you don't do that. Point being, you don't really need to worry about that when it comes to whether you've used the EQ on the desk or whether you've put it through an outboard compressor, or, if you've stuck a reverb thing on it or not. These are all decisions you can make in post after, and you can still send them through exactly the same piece of equipment and get exactly the same result, really. And even more, I would say there's always the possibility when you're focusing on just trying to record something for your own project as well, you might be in that musician headspace, you might be in that artist headspace, and you might be struggling to really focus on the audio engineering stuff as much. So you might go in there, record a take, come back in here, review it, go, am I happy with all of this? Am I happy with the compression EQ? And you go, yeah, it all sounds fine. Or you might be like, no, it sounds crap. And you might think that for hours and spend hours tweaking things that actually sounded fine. But when you're recording yourself, it's really hard to go in and out of those two different headspaces. And most importantly, studio time costs money. You might be the person who owns the studio, right? And is already paying the rent on this studio no matter what. Most of the people I'm probably talking to in this video are more like me. You're probably in the situation where you're actually hiring out the studio to spend time in it. And it gets expensive hiring out a studio to work in. So if you've hired out a studio for the day and you've got 8 hours to work in, you want to be working as efficiently as possible. And you might hold the opinion that the most efficient way to work then is to put as much stuff on as you record in as possible. Commit in the take as much as possible. I would agree. If someone else is in here with you making the audio engineer decisions, commit as much as you want in the take. But when you're recording yourself, that doesn't necessarily end up being the case. Because what's quicker, right? Spending an hour going back and forth, doing take after take just so you can make tweaks to different bits of outboard equipment, and then spending the next hour actually getting a take of everything that you want. Or just spending a quick 10 minutes back and forth making sure that the overall levels that you're happy with are going in on as few pieces of equipment as possible, getting the takes you're really happy with, and then going back in and sending it back out through the compressor after. In my head, it seems like it would be much quicker to do the second way, because it would take you minutes to make decisions about what that compression should actually sound like. Whereas if you're in here alone and you're having to do a take and then check it and do a take and then check it in order to set levels, then that could take you hours. And so the longer you take to set up everything to record the acoustic guitar, and then record the acoustic guitar, the less time you have to do other things. And you obviously, the main thing you want to get done in this space is you want to get as much actually recorded in that you can use and take away, and then, you can do the mix on it later. It strikes me that the best way to do that is to make things as uncomplicated as possible. Anyway, I know that's a controversial opinion because every time I've expressed it, I've had people sort of like, talking about outboard equipment that they actually own that is in their own home studio space, and they can spend those hours, faffing about like that. But it's obviously very different when you're hiring out a space like this. Anywho, having made all of those points, I suppose the biggest piece of advice I would give for you if you're in a space like this trying to record yourself would be, don't do it alone. If at all possible, don't do it alone. And I don't mean, actually just hire out the engineer in the studio and record with them. I mean, yeah, that would be my advice to a lot of people. I think there's a big push these days for for doing it all yourself, being the engineer, being the artist, being the musicians on everything. And sometimes this idea of turning into the perfect self-sufficient artist where you do it all yourself actually just means that you're not producing as good art as you would be. But anyway, that wasn't the point I was making. Take someone in with you if you can. It doesn't even need to be someone who is also an audio engineer, and you can just have them in here. Like, all I need you to do is to hit record for me in different sections. Move the loop thing to the next section for me when I tell you to do so. All I need you to do is stand here and watch the dial on that compressor. You know, you don't have to trust them with being able to tell them, I need you to turn on phantom power on this channel. But you can at least trust them if you tell them, right, I literally just need you to hit R for record and then space for stop. And it would make your life so much easier just to have someone else in here who can just do really basic things. Anywho, that's everything I wanted to say. I hope that you enjoyed this video, or that it at least made you think some things. Maybe you found a couple of the tips that I've shared in this helpful, and maybe you have some pointers you'd like to share with me. It's like, that's a really cumbersome way of doing something. I do it like this, and that's way simpler and easier. But if you completely disagree with everything I said in this video, then obviously you can share those opinions in the comments too. If you did enjoy this video, then you might enjoy my content on this channel in general, in which case you might want to hit that subscribe button. But I know that is a big decision to make, so do feel free to check out some other content on here before you do so. There'll be something recommended on the end screen. There are also links in the description to all of my socials if you want to follow me on all of them, and there are also links down there to my socials for my artist accounts. If you're listening to the music on this end screen, that's my music. You can go and listen to that, stream it, buy it, just follow me on Insta, watch me play it, and videos on TikTok, and all that stuff linked in the description. There's also a link down there to my Buy Me a Coffee if you want to support me in money-based ways. You can send one-off donations on there, but you can also subscribe to a membership, and that gets you access to extra content. That is all for this video, guys. I shall see you guys next time with another fun music-related video of some sort. Bye!